If you saw me go live last night, you know I got particularly riled up about the facts of a very, very, very poor take of a certain someone's take on Ukraine. Now, quite frankly, we're not even going to bother engaging with those takes because when that person thinks that the aliens are going to come down and, so we say, take away all the nuclear weapons and we'll all be hunky dory again, quite frankly, that person really shouldn't be engaged with in any serious way, shape, or form. But the situation in Ukraine is very, very serious and could, well, maybe turn to something quite hot. But here is a take that I quite like of that maybe this whole Ukrainian invasion is really Putin putting on a show to try and unite factions at home. As we've continuously said, Russia's economy at the moment isn't in a very good place. Its handling of COVID hasn't been very good either. But then again, most authoritarian governments haven't handled COVID very well at all. So it's no surprise there. Not only that, but Putin got a lot of the oligarchs to funnel their money into Crimea, and they aren't seeing the return on their investments that Putin promised. So there is a lot of, shall we say, good situations here for Putin where he can play to them, saying, "Look, I'm defending your interest. I'm defending your money, and I can do all this stuff." It's good for them, but unfortunately, there is a very, very big nationalist bloc within Putin's behind party that could not let him get out of this without very significant territorial concessions, or at least some sort of serious concession to allow him to back down. So this is a very, very worrying situation. And as I said before, we like to think that, rational people are in charge, but as we've seen before many times, that just really isn't the case. It's been the case here in the UK. It's been certainly seen the case in America, and I guarantee anyone watching can think of politicians or people in charge who think, how on earth did they really get to that position? Who allowed them to get there? But anyway, let's have a look at this article because it is quite interesting. It does put the idea of spin that this is, well, not spin, but it puts forward the idea that this is nothing more than a huge theatrical play put on by Putin to essentially try and secure his power base at home. So with that, before we go diving into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So let's dive into this. So this comes from The Guardian, with the title of Waiting for Putin. Russia's phony war is playing out as surreal theatre. Waiting for Russia to invade Ukraine feels a bit like waiting for Godot. It is the edgy reworking of Samuel Beckett's masterpiece. Russia's leader Vladimir Putin is cast appropriately as a relentless Vladimir, while the US President Joe Biden is the bowler-hatted Estragon, frequently dozing off. The play's central conceit is that the mysterious Godot, expected at any moment, never actually arrives. After Russia agreed last week to keep talking, Ukraine citizens have reason to hope that this crisis will turn out to be a comparatively vacuous non-event and a perpetually Putin-esque contribution to the theatre of the absurd. The border standoff, which commenced in earnest back in November, has lasted so long that the tea leaf reading Biden reckons Russia has to do something. This is the penetrating Mystic Meg analysis is not necessarily correct. Not one, perhaps not even Putin, knows whether something will happen today, next month, or even never. The continuing existing theme and the event of a definition of invasion is the endlessly debated. Biden depicts a D-Day-style Russian operation, but many Allenists expect an attack to be very fast, covert, and asymmetrical, using special forces, sabotage, and cyber warfare, as in Donbass back in 2014. While the slightly surreal waiting game continues, it is possible and if instructive to assess what damage has already been done and which individual countries are winning or even losing so far in the Ukraine phony war. For example, Annalena Baerbock, Germany's brand new foreign minister and co-leader of the Greens, has has a good war to date. Ignoring the chauvinistic sneers about her inexperience and gender, she has faced down Sergei Leone, her grisly Russian counterpart, when they met recently in Moscow. And in contrast, her boss, Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is also having a very miserable time of it. His provocation over what anti-Russian sanctions Berlin may support and his blocking of arms supplies to Ukraine has raised wider questions about his competence and about German leadership in Europe. Having long resisted American pressure to try and scrap the newly completed Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia, Scholz last week appeared to cave. It's been an unlikely beginning of Angela Merkel's less popular successor. France's Emmanuel Macron is also facing a spring presidential election, and he's struggling to try and reconcile his vision of Europe and the strategic autonomy with the reality of a continuing dependence on NATO and the offstage jeering from Britain's Boris Johnson. We will never give up dialogue with Moscow, Macron declares, but his bridge building is repeatedly undermined by Putin's recidivism, symbolized by, of course, the 2020 poisoning of the opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Undeterred, Macron continues to pursue de-escalation as a European solution. Yet, how real is that? Putin insists on dealing with the US, not the EU, which he disdains as and has deliberately bypassed. The so-called Normandy front talks finally returned to Paris last week, but Brussels is sliding towards irrelevance, and it's the biggest loser by far of the undeclared war for Ukraine. The opposite also may be said, surprisingly, of NATO. Obituaries were written for the 30-member alliance just after last year's Afghanistan humiliation, and Macron famously declared it brain dead. Yet now, thanks to the master strategist Putin, NATO is now experiencing a mini renaissance. The frontline Eastern European states have scurried under its protective umbrella, appearing successively for more troops and weapons. There is revived talk of membership for Finland and even Sweden. And even more improbably, Putin's Beckett-like inscrutability has changed Washington's calculations, as analyst Paul Taylor has noted. Putin's grandstanding has dragged the US back deeper into the European security, just when two successive American presidents tried to pivot Washington's strategic focus towards China, Taylor wrote. This is a big plus for Moscow's ally, President Xi Jinping, who feels the same way about Taiwan as Putin does about Ukraine. Other authoritarian regimes are also enjoying the drama. The heat is off on Iran's mullahs, as who were among the Western leaders was focusing on the mayhem in Myanmar, Yemen, or Tigray, as the resurgent Islamic State terror in Syria or Sahel. Ukraine's unlikely president, Vladimir Zelensky, formerly an integrated the thespian and comic, assures the bowler hat. While he's playing well to the foreign audiences in the role of the valiant underdog, concerns about official corruption in Kiev demonstrates the deficits, and the Donbass insurgency have also brushed aside by the likes of Liz Truss, the UK Foreign Secretary, in a very simplistic analysis. It's about freedom versus tyranny. Truss, obviously the jet-setting Margaret Thatcher intimidator, has not been having a good war. Like her predecessor Dominic Raab during the Afghan withdrawal, she went walkabout as the Ukraine crisis peaked, blundering around in Australia when she and the braying, terminally distracted Johnson should have been leading the change to keep Europe in peace. So what of the principal architect of all this provocative embargo? The US-based Russian expert Floria Hill says that Putin is winning without even firing a shot. He has the US right where he wants it, Hill wrote. A master of coercive inducement, he has advanced his overall aim to evict America from Europe to belatedly avenge the Soviet Union's defeat. Maybe it's true that Putin has succeeded in forcing the US to focus on Russia's security concerns, including future missile deployments and NATO exercises, and he will keep up the military and diplomatic pressure for now to see what concessions and freebies he can get. But Washington will not agree to freeze Ukraine out of NATO or remake Europe's post-Cold War security structures, and Putin surely knows it. Meanwhile, his aggressive tactics have rallied the very fractious Western democracies and stiffened the opposition now to his regime. So while the world is indeed waiting for Putin, Biden is indeed threatening to sanction him personally, as urged in this space just last week. Like a thief in the night, looking to see what he can grab, Russia's leader makes a pariah out of himself and of his country on the global stage. War or not, real or imaginary, that looks like defeat. So overall, I can say the situation in Ukraine is becoming, again, I do sort of agree, almost farcical at some point, but we are in a situation where Putin has surrounded Ukraine along even another country's border with troops across the Belarus border, across Ukraine as well, which is even more worrying. And now we're having to sit and wait to see what happens, because ultimately the ball is in now Putin's court. He set up the situation. The West responded now with, if you do anything, we will react in very strong terms, something I do not think he overly anticipated. But needless to say, it's going to be definitely something we have to keep an eye on and see how this situation does indeed unfold in the future. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.